Hey, welcome back. This is EQFIT Leadership Insights with Steve Goodner, and this is Straight Talk with Steve. Um, the focus of today is hiring, and I get this so often from the leaders that I work with. I think they'd rather do just about anything than hire. I mean, there are a few exceptions, but hiring is a full-time job all by itself. And what I want to do today is just share some secrets to maintain your sanity through the hiring process. But I think we need to do a quick update on what the hiring scene looks like today. AI and technology have made things a lot more difficult for hiring managers and HR professionals to select the best people that really have the right fit. When I talk about fit, you notice the name of my company and a lot of my playlists and things that I do, EQ Fit. That's emotional intelligence and that's fitness. But I have some other definitions for fit. One of those is finding ideal talent. Another, when we talk about development, is focused intentional transformation. So I've used that term fit in a lot of different ways, but for real meaning, for real purpose. So when I talk about fit, when it comes to hiring, I'm talking about not just an experience fit and a fit to the needs of the job. We're talking about a culture fit, a fit to the team, a fit to the leader, which is a pretty important fit. And there's a do they fit the organization? Do they fit the strategy and long-term goals of the organization? There's a lot of different ways to look at fit, and the very best hires will check all of those boxes. So what are the pitfalls today? What are the challenges we're up against? And I work with a lot of organizations in helping them hire. And I'll explain that here in a minute, and how I do that. But bottom line, when it comes to technology, AI, and all of that, here's one of the things that's happening today. You put out a job posting, right? Some way to announce that you got an opening and talk about what's needed for the position. Well, many candidates are taking their resume, their experience, their knowledge, where they've been, what they've done. They're combining that with the content of your job posting, and they're asking AI to create the ideal profile and resume specifically for your job posting. So how do I know this? Well, I'm tied into a lot of organizations and their hiring practices, but it was so funny, and a kind of funny in a unfortunate way. I had somebody call me, this has been last year sometime, and say, why do all of the resumes I'm getting for this position look exactly the same? And I said, well, number one, they're using old models of AI because the newer models wouldn't look all the same. But basically, I explained what was going on. And the thing that made me stop and really think about what that person was saying was the question that he asked me. Then how in the world do I know if they're the right fit? Well, obviously, we have interviews and all of that. By the way, for all of you out there who have healthy egos and believe that your interview skills are enough to determine all of those different levels of fit that you're talking about, I am absolutely in awe of your confidence in yourself. But I've been doing this 40 plus years. And as good as I am in interviewing and reading people and understanding people, there are things that I will not give up because I don't want to take a chance. Every hire that you make that turns sour is a huge, huge cost. And we all know that. We know what the cost of turnover is. I'm not going to spend time on that. That's another pitfall, by the way. The belief that your interview process is enough to identify everything you need to identify. Because a lot of times what I see with people, as good as their skills are, is that Number one, are they even doing enough interviews with somebody? How many interviews do they do? How well do they get to know the individual? Um, and then there's all these other things about background checks and references. References to me are a real challenge because usually they're going to put somebody down who's going to say a good thing and they prompted them. And frankly, if you call their old employer, you may very well get the standard phrase, well, they worked here from X to X. Smart employers do that. Do you know why? Because if you say, oh, they're great, they're wonderful, you're going to love that person, and you hire them and things go south, they have created liability for themselves. And so that's kind of the standard nowadays. If they say, oh, they're horrible, you're not going to, don't hire, I wouldn't hire them again, that kind of thing. And frankly, if they answer your questions about that, again, they open up liability on themselves. So we're kind of in this strange place in hiring where we'd love for everything to be transparent and honest and open and all of those kinds of things. But unfortunately, that's not where we are today. So there's a couple of pitfalls. Technology is really helping candidates look their very, very best. Our hiring skills need to improve. We need to develop new skills, new ways of doing things. So let's move from the pitfalls to, and there are many more I could talk about. How do you know you're going to hire somebody who doesn't get in there and then use that as a stepping stone to a better job somewhere else? You don't want to create the reputation of being a great company to be from. So that means you put in the investment in training and developing these people, and they move on to take higher level and better paying jobs somewhere else. And everybody's kind of got that little saying of, oh, that was a great company to be from. Well, you don't want that. You want long-term retention of talent. And that's going to become an even bigger challenge moving forward with our population growth the way it is, with the technology advancing. We're going to need more technology literate people that also have the human skills, the emotional intelligence skills. Emotional intelligence is probably the most important skill set right now, because if you don't have that, maybe if you're coding all day long, you don't need that, but anybody who's customer facing, and that means internal customers as well as external customers, needs to have those human skills, those emotional intelligence skills. So there's all the challenges and some of the pitfalls we've talked about. Let's get to the sanity part of this. Here's what I know from doing this more than 40 years. There are easier ways to do things that can give you better outcomes more often. What is that? Well, the very first place I'm going to land is assessments. Now, please don't turn this off. Please listen to me when I talk to you about assessments. It is not your favorite personality assessment or your favorite strengths assessment. There's nothing wrong with those, but they are very, very narrow in their focus and in your ability to really get enough out of that to help you. When I talk about assessments, I'm talking about a multi-dimensional approach to understanding who that individual is. I think my dad said it best. He was a psychologist and owned his own assessment company for many, many years, helped a lot of companies over the years, and really made a difference in people's lives and in their organizations. And he had a saying. He said, our assessment process, which is what I've learned from him and then incorporated other assessments. He said, our assessment process is providing you the same kind of information that you would learn about somebody if you worked with them for a year or so, but you get it before you make the hiring decision. That's what good assessments are. They will give you a picture of how that person is going to show up in the workplace that's accurate, what we call predictive validity, and it's going to help you make better decisions. What if you have 2 or 3 candidates that look very similar and you're trying to make a decision between them? That is the power of these multidimensional assessment processes. Now, when I say multidimensional assessments, I'm not going to go into all of the different ones and the science behind them. I would love to have a conversation with you about those if you're interested. You can go on our website, eqfit.org, and check those out. But here's what I'm looking for. Personality, absolutely. But let's add to that motivators and drivers. What are the motivators and what are the mindsets of those people? What drives them? What gives them motivation? Emotional intelligence, absolutely. And then what I call the habit story assessment from 2-story, which measures productive and counterproductive habits on the same scale, because counterproductives are going to take away from your productive habits. It measures your response patterns and your emotional state, what all is going on. Why is that important? Number one, habits are 40 to 90% of our daily decisions and actions are habitually done. That means with very little thought. So if you don't have a good habit formation, then your counterproductives are going to take over. And that's a big deal. And this is a fairly new assessment and probably one of the best I've ever used. As a matter of fact, I'm doing a LinkedIn Live here right after I finish this video. I'm going to do a LinkedIn Live on your success map, and it's going to talk about patterns and habits and how critical those are in your mindset and in the way you approach your decisions, your actions. We want to have better control of those things. And then we have some specific assessments based on the role, based on what's going on with that individual. Are they going to be a salesperson? Are they going to be a leader, a manager? What is their role? We have specific assessments to help us determine other things. So when you start to put all of these assessments, okay, now your question is going to be, okay, is somebody spending 10 hours taking these assessments? No. The average time to take one of these assessments is 15 to 20 minutes. So even with all of those assessments, and when I do my EQFIT masterminds, I have one for leadership, I have one for sales, and I have one for ministry leaders. When I do those, there's 6 different assessments that those people will take going in. Why? Because that's how we develop a customized development plan for that individual. Don't you want the best data possible? Well, the same thing goes for hiring. Don't you want the best possible data for hiring before you make a huge investment in someone? And that investment is not just what you're paying them every month. It's also the training, the systems, the hardware, the cars, whatever else is a part of their role. That's why we got to make the best decision the first time. And as a matter of fact, I like to remove that word best and put in the word right, what I call right fit hiring. We want to do it the right way first so that we don't have to do it again down the road. So assessments is one way to do it. Another way to do it, and frankly, everything we do starts with assessments. They're that critical. Another way is just expand the time that you spend with a candidate before you make a hiring decision. The more you're around somebody, you do have probably some really good skills in reading people, understanding who they are. And when you have the assessment data to go off of, it gives you all kinds of input to ask better questions of candidates before you make the hiring decision. And my clients that use the assessments, we provide them, and my professional feedback to them on those assessments and my recommendations and suggestions and questions, they do a lot better with their hiring success. So spend more time, do multidimensional assessments, find somebody like me who is certified in many different assessments, not just one or two. and make sure that those are curated and customized to the role that you're hiring for, because the culture that you work in is unique to you and to your organization and to your team. And an organization may have one culture and a team may have a slightly different culture that falls under the organizational culture. But you as a leader have a desire and a need to have people fit in with your leadership style and with the way you hire people. So I'm going to close this out. I could talk more and more and more about hiring, but the main thing I wanted you to understand is hiring is a full-time job all by itself. Most leaders, managers, people who are hiring, it's tough. It's a challenge, especially in today's marketplace. But there are better ways to make the right decision. And I would encourage you to check that out. Have a great day.